Hello, good to see you. Welcome to another episode of Moonlit Tales by London Blue. Lit tales to tale under the moon. I'm so glad you stopped by. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and share this channel with your friends. Thought I'd do something a little bit different for episode 6. I have been doing a lot of live storytelling events, and I really enjoyed this particular tale, so I thought, since I had somebody record it, I would just share this particular event with you as episode 6. Enjoy! One thing I'm really excited about, though, is last year I launched Moonlit Mysteries with the St. Albans Haunted Trail, and it was a creepy storytelling event, and it went over so well that we've already had a meeting and we're already planning for this year's. And we're going to go a little bigger and a little badder this year, and I'm really excited about this event. But that threw me into the whole storytelling, which is where I've changed my podcast to this year, doing Moonlit Tales podcast on YouTube and Spotify. And that also intrigued me to start doing live storytelling events. I'm now also doing Macabre at the Meadery, which is a really cool interactive live storytelling event in a meadery in Charleston. It's called the Wandering Wind Meadery. And it's an interactive tale, and I'm pretty sure it's something that's never been done before. I mean, you've heard of the murder mysteries. Yeah, that's cool and interesting. But this one is probably something you've never been to before because it is an interactive, choose your own adventure story. So when you come in as an audience member, I'll read part of the story and I'll get to a stopping point, and the audience gets to vote and choose which way the story goes from there. What does the character get to do next? For this particular event, I wanted to do something special, and I did a little research on the month of March and the full moon in March, and came up with some really cool facts. I would like to play a song for you, okay? Now this song is one that I remember listening to when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And for some reason, this song has stuck with me from my childhood. And it was kind of a little bit of an inspiration for this talk, so I'm gonna step aside and ask if we can play this. For copyright purposes, I'm not gonna play the song in this podcast. However, I do encourage you to look it up and listen to it. It is the Hearse Song by Harley Poe, and you can find it on Spotify, YouTube, so forth. Check it out. This song is like over 200 years old. They don't know who actually wrote it. They have done some research and found that there's a little bit coming from this text in the 1800s, a little bit from this text in the early 1900s, and so it's just a conglomeration that people have put together over the years. That kind of inspired my research. And my research is called The Moon of March. Under the warmth of the sun, the ground becomes soggy from the melted snow and thunderous rains coming in as a roaring lion. The old song, rumored to have been written by death itself, creeps into the brain. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. The worms play pinochle on your snout. They eat your eyes, they eat your nose. They eat the jelly between your toes. Little by little, the earth is moved under our feet as the worms drudge through the sludge, creating tunnels for seeds to take root and feed from the dirt beneath. Unbeknownst to many, the forces of the upcoming full moon of March are already at work. Some of the Native Americans from bygone eras have labeled it as the worm moon, as it signifies the wiggly movements of the worm's voyage from the cold, solid ground and decomposing corpses of all that had died to the softer, moist surface. The skeletal remains of humans, animals, insects, deceased plants, etc., are shifted and fed upon during their journey to the surface of the earth. It is the end of winter as death releases its cold grip. A rejuvenating time, a time to start over, a time to begin anew. Hence why the Romans set it as the first month of the year. That was before the calendar was revised around 690 to 700 BC, when they added January and February. This leads us to why we call it March. The Romans named this month in honor of their deity Mars, the Avenger, god of war and guardian. One legend says that he was the son of Zeus. It is claimed within Rome there was a shrine thought to have originally been the home of the king. There, the sacred spears of Mars were kept. Now, during an uprise of war or battle, the spears were taken out and they were shaken. And they would chant for Mars to awaken. One could almost imagine the worms acting as Mars' spears, shaking, disturbing the earth, and shouting, "Wake up! It is time to sprout up and fight for new life." As Old Man Winter's death grip is loosened, invigorating energy and explosive new birth brings us to another Native American name given to the moon of March, which is the crow moon. With the worms surfacing, no doubt it excites the hunter in the birds of the crows and ravens, as well as other predators. Furthermore, the illuminance of this full moon intrigues the crows as their curiosity is sparked, and they are drawn to everything that glitters in the moonlight. They'll even be little tricksters and go out and knock things over. They're extremely active and exploring creatures, and that essence of energy is also shared and felt by others, including us. Therefore, the moon of March is a time to rid yourself in your home of all negativity. Recharge by embracing the presence of positivity. During this time, those who practice witchcraft or healing methods also recharge themselves, as well as the crystals and other devices that they use in their practice under the light and energy of this new moon. Which maybe also explains why we get that bug to want to do our spring cleanup. However, as death leaves and new life bursts through, there can often be shifting forces as we acknowledge the spring equinox. It can be an awkward, uncomfortable transition, just like the wild phases of an energetic teenager suffers when becoming an adult. The Native Americans believed that the four winds were powerful enough to sweep in and demolish the people and the land. But they could also be gentle enough to carry in blessings and even foretelling messages of the future. Hence why some indigenous people also called this moon the wind moon. This all seems fitting as we recall the old saying of March comes in like a roaring lion and goes out like a lamb. It also ties back to the Roman deity Mars, once believed to be an avenger and guardian with explosive energy of a lion. Yet, it is also a celebratory time of new life and hope for many who worship another avenger and guardian, Jesus Christ. A time when Christians celebrate the resurrection of the Lamb of God, who promised to come back as a lion. Now, regardless of what you call the full moon of March, or what you believe or practice, one must recognize the circle of life and death, decomposition and birth, in addition to the forces of the actual living or inanimate. These driving forces transforms the earth. The poem is called What the Moon Said to Me. Let me tell you what the moon said to me. as I leaned down on one bended knee beside the grave of someone dear, yet dear not to me. I knew not the stranger in the ground, nor the family that draped her shroud. To me, she was just history I had found, lying deep and still, offering no sound. I fixed the thin paper to the stone that crowned her cold, dark, earthly home. The wind blew a force disturbingly unknown, piercing my soul, shaking my bones. With charcoal between my fingers, uneasiness of strangeness lingers, whisking past my ear, a soft, eerie moan. I search for a trickster, a ghost, or a gnome. Amongst the shadows, the moon cast a bright light. It quickens my heart, imposing flesh bumps of fright. A race to preserve the impressionable sight of the tombstone I came to visit on this very night. Not with my ear, but I do hear a voice, claiming to bear witness to a forthcoming choice. Understanding dawned in the illuminating plight. I dismiss it all as a childish trite. I stand to my feet on the old sunken grave. I snatch the paper with the impression to save. The dirt became cellular, as if carved by lathes, and a looming shadow appeared as a knave. With flaming red eyes, his hands did churn. From the trembling earth came thousands of worms. The moon whispered softly, "Stay steadfast and brave. Face down this demon. Cast it away. You mustn't back down, or surely you'll die. The energy is strong when the sun is aligned. Draw from this power before I pass by." Swallowing hard, I looked up at the sky, inhaling moon dust on a breath so deep. Beams of moonlight through my eyes did seep. I turned toward the shadow, now suddenly meek, and spewed out the power, then watched it weep. In anguish it cried, the worms returned to the earth. The darkness rescinded, the monster it birthed. Laughing, I could not contain the joy of much mirth. I smiled, nodding to the moon's rejuvenating girth. What the moon said was to stay strong and brave, and never back down from something seemingly grave. When the sun and moon line, the middle is earth. Embrace those moonbeams. Trust in the power that's worth. There's parts of the story that are 100% absolutely true. And before we get into it, I'll just let you know up front, I don't know if you're familiar with the West Virginia golden trout, specifically the West Virginia golden rainbow trout. It is specific to West Virginia. The West Virginia Division of Natural Resources actually bred this fish for West Virginia only. Now there is some type of golden trout out west. It's not the same thing. So the story, again, drawing from the inspiration from the worm moon and the inspiration from our golden trout here in West Virginia. Here we go. The legend of Goldie and the worm moon. Grandpa, why are we out here digging at night? Can't we just buy them at the bait shop? I mean, we're not even going fishing yet. Aiden asked while combing through the loose, damp dirt. Tonight is the full moon. More importantly, it is the worm moon, Grandpa replied, scrunching his gray brows and pointing to the sky. Oh? Aiden asked with bulging eyes of excitement. And what's that mean? Does the moon make the worms crawl out and walk like zombies? He asked while jumping to his feet. He began to squirm and hop around, pretending to be an undead, zombified earthworm moving across the garden bed in a vertical manner. Grandpa laughed as he pulled a long, skinny worm from the soil and dropped it in their dirt bucket. It slowly disappeared from the moonlight as it burrowed down toward the bottom. Come over here, and I'll tell you the legend of West Virginia gold trout. Golden rainbow trout, to be exact, Grandpa said, as he rolled off his knees and onto his hip with a groan. Aiden hustled back over and slid in beside him as if he was sliding into home plate. Easy there, young'un. You don't want to take out my good knee, or you'll be fishing alone. So what exactly is this legend? I mean, we've caught rainbow trout before, and last year we even saw one of the gold ones. True, 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 Grandpa said, but we've never caught a goldie. These fish have been carefully bred by the West Virginia Division of Natural Resources. It took them nearly 14 years, but they were finally able to breed enough to be released. The golden swimmers were introduced to the public in 1963 during the West Virginia Centennial, and they called it the Gold Rush. Okay, that's cool and all, Grandpa, but it doesn't quite explain why we're out here digging in the dirt under the full moon looking for worms. Oh, Grandpa repositioned himself to sit flat on his rump and expelled another grunt. He smiled, squeezing one wrinkle into another, creating deep valleys along his face and what appeared to be bubbled up jiggly jello puddles under his eyes. He raised his crooked, dirty index finger and said, now that's where it gets interesting. You see, legend says that if you catch a goldie on bait harvested under the worm moon, that there fish will grant you 3 wishes. Well, at least your choice of 3 wishes. Aiden crossed his thin legs, and his bony knees popped out through the holes in his jeans. He shimmied side to side and asked, with more heightened cracked voice than usual, what are the choices? Grandpa leaned back on his elbow and replied, you can choose from wealth, knowledge, or youth. But you have to be careful about how you word it. Sometimes it can backfire on you. Oh, how so? Well, about 12 years or so ago, I expected it was about the time you were born, a man caught a goldie on a worm moon worm. In his excitement, he made his wish as he pulled her out of the river and didn't even realize what he had done until what? Aiden asked, sitting up on his knees. No one is 100% sure because the father was reported missing. His son was found hanging along the riverbank down the hill from their truck with another young feller. His shirt was to his knees and his shorts was nearly to his ankles, and he had trouble keeping them up. The authorities tried to locate the boy's family, but ended up placing him in foster care. I heard the poor kid bounced around a couple different families before finally running away. And no one has seen hide or hair of him around these parts ever since. His son tried to tell the police that the boy was his dad, but I reckon no one believed him. He even told the newspaper man about the legend and wishes and the golden trout. He added that as his daddy reeled in that goldie, he shouted, "Oh, it's gonna be good to be a kid again." Do you really think his dad was changed into that boy? Grandpa tissed and replied, be honest. But I'd have to agree with the man. Although I wouldn't want to stay a boy forever, it sure would be nice to feel like one again. Grandpa's bones creaked like an old screen door on a cold night as he slowly stood up. Aiden started digging faster into the top layer of the dirt, frantically looking for more worms. You know, now that I think of it, there was another one that claimed to have caught a goldie on worm moon bait. Aiden didn't even bother to look up as he eagerly continued to scour the ground, but asked, "Yeah, well, what did he ask for?" "It wasn't a he," Grandpa said. Aiden suddenly stopped, flashed Grandpa a look of shock, and then asked, "Come on, you don't mean a girl?" He winked at his grandson. "Yep, and from what I heard, she was a fine-looking angler, too." Well, what'd she wish for?" Grandpa scratched his head and said, "My guess is wealth. Because the next day, she hit the lottery for $4.3 million. "Wow, that's cool," Aiden replied and refocused on his search. "Yepers, because of all that money and her being a handsome lady, all the cockroaches came running." "Ew, cockroaches? Gross!" Grandpa laughed at Aiden's reply and then explained, "Not the bug type, the greedy people type that just wanted a piece of the pie. Her husband got fed up and left with their young son. She was robbed multiple times and couldn't get no peace for someone always stalking and hounding her. Then one night, a man pulled a gun on her." Aiden stopped for a brief moment, peered up and asked, "What'd she do? Did he kill her?" "Nah, she got away. But sadly, she died in a car wreck as she made her escape." Aiden looked at his grandpa with bright green eyes and began to water. Then said, "Kind of what you said, kind of what Dad said, happened to Mom. She died in a car wreck too." "Yeah, I suppose. Well, if I catch one, I'll be smarter. No offense, Grandpa, but you adults are old now and you don't know how the world works today." Grandpa chuckled and then asked, "Is that so? Well, tell me then, what are you going to wish for if you catch yourself one of them goldies on the worm moon bait?" As Aiden pulled a small worm from the shallow hole, he held it up in the moonlight and said, "Well, Grandpa, I already have youth on my side, so I figure I'll just wish for more knowledge. Then I can figure out the wealth stuff." Grandpa smiled and patted Aiden on the shoulder, then answered, "You're a pretty smart kid. I'm not so sure you're going to need any of them wishes. Get on up out of that dirt. Let's go inside and get some of your grandma's pecan pie." Thank you.
All right.